things. And has anybody's coattail or dress tail or hem has been pulled this week?
Yeah, mine got pulled.
Yours got pulled? Brother Wilson, I know you're going to get pulled.
Pull it one time.
Takes more than one pull. Well, Brother Jim Orange was last week, and I had to preach Friday, and I made his day. He was coming for me. So I'm part of the club. I like this scripture. You know, sometimes you think you have a favorite scripture, you read another one. They're just all good, aren't they? The Word of God. Anybody ever heard of that scripture, Proverbs 13:19? There's two parts to it. The second part is those who do evil, it's an abomination. I think almost not to do evil. They want it so badly. We think of evil as abomination, but it's abomination to them not to be able to perform the wicked desires that they have. But the first part of this proverb says, the desire accomplished is sweet to the soul. Have you ever experienced that scripture? And if I could add to it, a desire is accomplished, and a desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, especially if you didn't think you could accomplish it. That's a good feeling in all matters of practical living, but especially in the work of the Lord. I determined a new or developed a new definition of torture, or just tragedy maybe, is wanting to do something so badly and feel like you just can't. Have you ever felt that way? And it just is almost terrorizing to you. I remember my first, I wasn't saved coming up in school. I liked school. I liked all the things associated with the school board, the projector. And I'd watch my teacher and the silhouette of her hands, and she'd write the fractions. And I loved writing fractions, like 7th grade. And but then I hated school. I hated to study. I liked school, but I hated to study. Yeah, but I liked teaching, but I was so dumb. And I was telling Brother Harris, the first time I got saved, the biggest revelation you have is about yourself. How dumb you are, what little you know. I've done nothing with my life. All my 14 years of living. And so I wasn't the best student until I got saved. God gives you purpose. So when I went to college my first year, I felt like there was a screen on my forehead saying she doesn't belong here. You know, I felt like I can't deal with this higher academic level. Because when I was in high school, being that I wasn't the most studious or saved when I entered high school, I didn't take the appropriate classes. So I had a lot of catching up to do. I really did. So I know how to feel at times. It's overwhelming. It's such a daunting task to do things you can't. But I experience, and you only from experience, that the Lord will lift you up. You will walk in the might of the Lord. I think David talked about something like that, where you're spent. I can't go on, Lord. And he'll rescue you. He'll send grace. He'll send a helper. He's done it, and I'm looking forward to him to keep doing it. And he's done it this week. And thank God people have such character as initiative. I love that character, like somebody noticing something needs to be done. Brother Phillips wanted me to teach a little bit of English this week because he wanted to impress upon you the importance and the need for writers in the church. He said, tell them, sometimes the paper's been criticized because it's mostly his writings. You want to guess why that is? I think you know. We love reading his writings, but we do need writers. If you think it's send it, have to be perfect. And I'm not the editor. He is. I proofread, and I may change some grammatical structure, but I change nothing, especially that could change anything. That's a mess. I don't know. And so pray about that and step out and do something hard, you know. And accomplish, I can't even go, the desire accomplished is sweet to the soul. Feels good accomplishment in the Lord. Okay. Thank God for the PowerPoint, for the TV's working. Brother Zach, I have favor. That's all I can say. Favor in the Lord. I know you taught without it. I know I was already sick having to teach without my PowerPoint. So with all that having been said, and I've used this image years ago, I thought I'd bring her back. Boy, it is delayed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it working? 5. Y'all gotta see this now. It's in your handout and it's minuscule. Come on. Any ideas? Where'd Isabella go?
She said she'd be right back.
Hold on 1 second.
I think there's a picture of me. She's got white hair.
Okay.
I think she can do what she's doing.
It looks painful. Just stretch your mind.
Yes, it does.
Look at your PowerPoint. Stretch your mind. That's what you're going to have to do in regards to writing. Man, this just upsets me. If I could have opened that door, I was going to yell out her name. We need a, what do you call it? A speaker system. There's another word for that.
Yeah,
You know, it's in schools when you're called to the principal's office.
yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Phillips was calling me.
We're going to talk about punctuation. Does punctuation give you any trouble at times?
Yeah.
Any ideas, Isabella? It's just not moving. It's stuck on that first one. Please, God, let it work just because of Brother Zach. No, it's not. We already tried that, but okay. Okay, follow. You got your handouts. Punctuation is essential and used to convey and clarify the meaning of written language. It's such simple marks as a full stop. That's what they say in England. We call it a period or the comma. And the more complex ones, semicolons and hyphens. Getting punctuation wrong can change the entire meaning of a sentence. And I have an example of that.
She wanted the middle one up there. She was trying to get the.
Oh, you got that. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Isabella. Yes. What'd you do? Zach, Brother Zach. I know it hurts. It hurts. Thank you, honey. I owe you Chick-fil-A. Notice Ephesians. Phillips referred to this. Boy, there was another scripture tomorrow, but noticed in that scripture, boy, if that comma either were there or were not, the whole part. But Ephesians 4:11 and 12. So Christ. Actually, I've seen some better comments. There, some Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the teachers. There's no comma, masters and teachers. Comma separates into units. So that's why pastors and teachers are one unit. Pastors should be able to teach. Apparently, isn't that right, Brother Steele? And so in every translation I've read so far, the pastors and teachers go together. Yeah. In Greek, this is pulled from Greek. Now, Greek way back, even before Koine Greek, there was no punctuation at all. And I don't know if that's classical Greek. There's so many different Greeks in antiquity way back. No periods. And because language was so heavily inflected, meaning there's so much information or DNA carried in the nouns and the verbs, it wasn't needed. That's amazing, isn't it? That's just truly amazing. Over time, maybe Erasmus, great Greek, others, but prepositions and punctuation emerged, and it brought clarity. But I have to look up that scripture in the Greek and see. Well, no, in the Greek New Testament, there's punctuation, but language evolves, writing evolves, changes. So we're going to talk about punctuation. All right, let's see if it works. And English, you're loaded with them, about 16 of them. Are we going to have to cut this on every time I just pull up your chair up here. Just drive for me. Period, semicolon, hyphen. You use all those, don't you, in writing? You're just going to have to look it up. I can't go through every punctuation. Sometimes it's better to use a period, sometimes a semicolon, but there are rules that dictate the usage of semicolons. And then you got to know if it's capitalization is necessary. Google it. I have a stack, probably 3 stack English books that I collected over the years. And if I go to bookstores, I'll pick one from the 1920s, the 1940s, and I'll read from one. Maybe I think it's from the 1920s. It's interesting how different it was back then, what they employed in writing as to what they do now. It's still there, but it was really magnified. I got to read that tomorrow. So we're on all the punctuation marks. There they are. Y'all know them. All right. Next one, Isabel, let's try it. Yeah. Well, commas are arguably the most important grammatical tool the English language has to offer. Next. All in all, the power of the comma is mighty. Just because it's a little squiggle mark doesn't mean it shouldn't be paid a lot of attention. So we're going to give it attention today because some of you in your first writing assignment mentioned how grammar is daunting to you, or punctuation. Sometimes you notice sentences have commas and they may be slightly changed, and then there's no comma. We'll learn why. Here's the power of the comma. Read that. I love that. The pun can be taken literally. I was walking past a farm and a sign read duck, comma, eggs. I thought that's unnecessary, comma, and then it hit me. Without the comma, it just reads duck eggs. Duck, comma, eggs. Has it hit you yet? Okay. I'm in class. Call you later. All right. Quick quiz on this. I got this off the Purdue University website. Let's talk about commas a little bit. What do you think about this sentence? Taylor sent wedding invitations to her parents, the king and the queen. How many people did Taylor invite to the wedding, according to this sentence? Some say 2. Any more? 4. How many vote 2?
I say 2.
Okay, how many vote 4? Okay. It's ambiguous. And ambiguous means it's open to more interpretation because I can read it 2 ways. Taylor sent wedding invitations to her parents, comma. Now the following, is that in a positive? You ever heard that grammatical term, a positive? A positive is a modifier. It tells what precedes the noun. So is she calling her parents the king and queen? That's what it sounds like to me too. That's why I would have said 2. But I can see where it says 4, and it would have clarified it more if, well, not yet, if we would have put a comma right after here. If that were the case, how many would you have counted 4? Her parents can. I know. So it's ambiguous because of the Oxford comma. Anybody ever heard of that term, the Oxford comma? Happened years ago from a printer. He started inserting a comma when you have a series of items. And for a long time, people still do it today. They argue about it. Wanda ate cake, comma, pie, comma, donuts, and what's left? Here, I'm sorry, let me shut off my phone. I thought it was, okay. So let's see. Yeah, but that's not a good example because it's so separate, you can kind of tell without the comma, but sometimes you can't. And I use the Oxford comma. Let's talk about it a little bit more, and it'll become clear. Thank you, honey. Go ahead. The Oxford comma, sometimes called the serial comma, is the comma before and. I bought apples, comma, oranges, comma, and bananas. It's surprisingly controversial. Some people love it, others hate it. Even grammarians and style guides disagree on the necessity of this comma. That being said, let's look how the Oxford comma could help. And there was a huge case that emerged, a $10 million case that emerged because, $10 million class action against the main dairy company because they didn't use a comma and maybe it was needed and they would not have lost $10 million because of that little comma. Because they didn't know how to interpret it. So you can get by without using commas in some sentences, that Oxford comma in a series, but I use it all the time. It never fails you. It will always have the clarity needed. Otherwise, we would not have stumbled at that first one. It was just ambiguous. Okay, and then I went on to even talk about this, and we've already discussed it. The word appositive, I use that word. Was I clear in what an appositive is? Mm-hmm. It renames. It renames. So that's why I took it to be the king and queen was an appositive, renaming her parents. So that's what that grammatical term is. So let's talk about punctuation of appositives. Because sometimes you use them and sometimes you don't. Judgment is order, depending on what you mean to convey in the sentence. That's what makes it a little difficult. So you gotta say what you mean what you say, write what you mean what you write, that kind of thing. Your friend Bill is in trouble. Bill is the appositive defining friend, but there's no comma there, right? It's not because it's a short sentence either. The longer sentence, the chief surgeon, comma, an expert in organ transplant procedures, took her nephew on a hospital tour. That's correct too. And that has commas. Anybody have a guess why? And would anybody have been inclined to say, your friend, comma, Bill, comma, is in trouble? Because a lot of times, sometimes that would be correct. But, go ahead, Brother Harris.
The appositive is not the subject of the sentence. So your friend is the subject, the chief surgeon is the subject, but Bill describes the subject.
Okay, I think you're onto it. If I were to go to Sister Pam and say, your friend is in trouble, and I didn't name him, so Bill's not named, well, you know that Sister Pam has more than one friend. Okay, let me use Brother Zach. We can definitely.
You better get back to me.
That's true. He's supposed to stay right over there.
So for the reader or even Sister Pam to know which friend, don't you have to say the name? If that bit of information, that word or words, is necessary to develop the meaning of the sentence, you don't need commas. You have to have it there. That's what dictates that. The second sentence is much different. The chief surgeon, an expert in organ transplant procedures, took her nephew on a hospital. If you were to erase that red, it still makes sense and you have full meaning. So it offsets what is not necessary. So make sense?
Yes.
A light bulb go off? Well, don't you love the light? Yes, who?
Wouldn't it really be determined the context. Now, if it's a single standalone sentence, I get that. But what if in the context, it's in the bottom of a paragraph where there's three people talking and one of them fell off a cliff and the other says your friend is in trouble? Would that be wrong?
Context
Wouldn't context?
is the foremost thing in determining meaning. You're right about that. So, yes, I think if I understood your example correctly, and what if there were 3 chief surgeons? That's the context now. The context has changed. That one says the chief. There's apparently only one. But it's among the chief surgeons. Okay, I don't want to tell you wrong, because I would still, among the chief servants, because now the structure of the sentence has changed, comma, the one who is an expert, comma, that changed the grammatical construction. I started to say destruction. That changed the grammatical construction. Yes, context matters, so let me stay safe. But when you start changing the sentence and adding to it, keep in mind you may be changing the construction of the sentence, so new grammar rules apply. So still in the case that I was just saying, I use commas there. So, but yes, I needed to say that for the meaning. You're just going to cause me some homework, brother, but yes, okay? Yeah, when y'all have questions, I welcome them, although I tremble a little bit. But, yeah, go ahead. We can learn from one another.
Oh, here.
And I'm going to show you about changing construction of a sentence and how commas are changed because of that.
If you change the first sentence to one of your friends, then it would be a comma there. Bill, comma, is in trouble, to clarify which
Exactly.
friend.
Exactly. Yeah, I would do that. I would do that. Because you can say one of your friends is in trouble, but then you're going to say who.
Right.
So it requires another sentence. So sometimes you need, when you put in clauses, they're called clauses and phrases. You've got to have commas for those things. So you're including clauses now. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. That's why it's so tedious. It's thinking. Okay, let's go on. The popular U.S. President, John Kennedy, was known for his eloquent and inspirational speeches. Would it be meaningful to you if John Kennedy were erased? Who is the popular U.S. president? Because I would have said, oh, he's talking about Ronald Reagan or Abraham Lincoln. So it's required. He's not agreeing politically or something. So you don't have a comma there. That's why. It's restricted to, you got to have the meaning. So no commas are needed. Let's go to the next one. Well, was that go back, honey. John Kennedy. Okay, you changed the sentence a little bit. So commas are needed for that. The John Kennedy, because you can understand John Kennedy without what's in red. John Kennedy was known for his eloquent and inspirational speeches. If you change it a bit, you wouldn't need commas there, but because you changed the structure of the sentence, you need comma, because you got to identify. You don't have to identify. That's just added information when you do it like that. So I think that kind of answered your question too, and proves what I was trying to say. But go ahead, brother.
And one thing that I try to do when I'm writing sermons and stuff is, and I have no idea if this is right or wrong, but whatever I put in a comma or between the commas, if I take that out, that's still a complete thought.
Yes, it should. Well, yes. Yeah, I would need examples, but it sounds like that's right. I don't know if there's any exceptions.
Like this
but
right
yes.
here. John Kennedy was known for his eloquent and inspirational speeches. That's still a complete thought.
Right,
That's
exactly.
still a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
But with the commas and with that additional information, those commas are needed.
Right. You've added a clause or a prepositional phrase, and a lot of times those are interrupter words, leading words. Well, comma, she did like the soup. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Next one. Coordinating conjunctions. You ever heard of this? And, but, for, or, nor, so? Well, there needs to be a comma after so. Yes. Put a comma in there. Can you hear me? Did somebody walk in? Oh, like I thought you were telling me to go run them down in the hallway. Yes, Thea, go ahead.
An interesting way that I learned how to remember all of the coordinating conjunctions was by calling them
Fanboys.
If you just like rearrange
Mm-hmm.
the
Fanboys.
words,
Yeah.
just as an interesting way to
That's
help.
an acronym. Fanboys. Fanboys. I think I put it up, but fan, F for, A is for and, N is nor, B, but it helps you memorize your coordinating conjunctions. What does coordinating conjunctions do? Does anybody know? Brother Sam or somebody? What's your function? Love that song. I should have had it playing.
They connect two sentences or like two clauses with, that's what the conjunction is.
Is anything else? When you join two independent clauses, you need a comma. You need a comma. You have to have a comma. The game was over, comma, but the crowd refused. That's a compound sentence right there. The student explained her question, yet here comes another independent clause. You've got two independent clauses. It always takes a comma. Yes, yes. All right. Easily understood. Let's go to the next. Use commas after introductory clauses, phrases, or words. While I was eating, the cat scratched the door. What is the main part of the sentence? What's the independent clause and what's the dependent clause in there? Go ahead.
The independent clause would be the cat scratched at the door, and the dependent clause would be while I was eating, because instead of a comma, if you were to put a period after while I was eating,
That would be a
complete
fragment.
thought, because while I was eating, what
So
happens?
class, is that thank you, honey. Is that a compound sentence? No, what is that called? Anybody have an idea? When you've got an independent clause and a dependent clause. Anybody know? It's called a complex sentence. Two different kind of structures into one sentence. You have a complex sentence. But guess what? And I'm sure I wrote this. What if I were to write, change the structure of the sentence? The cat scratched at the door while I was eating. Is a comma necessary? It's not. You don't need it. If you change the structure of the sentence and move that independent clause move the dependent clause behind the independent clause, you do not need the comma. So if you write for the voice sign, we'd take that one out. We take out the comma, not your statement. So when you fool around sentences, you're really changing a lot. And it necessitates a relook at your punctuation. Make sense? I like it. So starter words, if, when, because. When you finish that dependent thought, you're going to have a comma. I notice, however, though, in short sentences, I have seen examples online. Wanda ate cake and Elizabeth ate pie. Short sentence, two complete thoughts, and I didn't see a comma with it. I'm still inclined. I can't help myself. I'll still put it. However, don't put a comma after the main clause. That's what I just said. Let's see. The cat scratched at the door while I was eating tuna. No, first of all, I would not be eating tuna. But that's not what's faulty about that sentence. You just don't need a comma there because you've changed it. She was still quite upset, although she had won the Oscar. They're saying put a comma there. Why? Here's the same situation. She was still quite upset, although she had won the Oscar. This is the independent clause, and this is the dependent. Now, up in that one, you don't need it. That's incorrect. But you need it here, so they say, grammarians, because it is an example of extreme contrast. So it's just something to think about. It'll drive you crazy. Common introductory words, yes, however, well. Put your commas in there. Use a pair of commas in the middle of sentence to set off clauses, phrases, and words that are essential to the meaning of the sentence. We talked about that. Clause. That Tuesday, which happens to be Stephanie's birthday, was it on a Tuesday, Stephanie? Yeah, you. Sister, is the only day she's available to meet because she wants a Chick-fil-A iced coffee. She wants to meet at Chick-fil-A. So that's not essential to the meaning of the sentence, so that's set off in commas. Phrase, Chick-fil-A has decent salads. The iced coffee, comma, on the other hand, is exceptional. So put that off in commas. I appreciate your hard work. In the case, however, even that one word, you seem to have overexerted yourself. So that just supports what we've already said. Quick summary then. You hear the word phrases and clauses. Both are used to build sentences. You use them all the time. You use so many things you don't know what to call them. I even have a dictionary that's just a dictionary of grammar terms. You ever looked up something on the internet and you don't know what to call it? You don't know how to spell it. You just hope it'll start populating on its own. Well, my book helps me to kind of find the word I need so I can look it up. And so this is a good distinction. A phrase is a group of words acting as a unit that does not include a subject and a predicate. For example, a prepositional phrase. On the other hand, between you and me. By the way, it's always you and me. It will never be between you and I. Never, never, never. We can talk about that tomorrow if you want to. And a clause, on the other hand, is a group of words acting as a unit that does have both a subject and a predicate or a verb. A phrase can never stand by itself as a complete sentence, while a clause might be able to do so. So it's just telling you what's the difference between a phrase and a clause. I like knowing those kind of things. I'm probably the only one that goes on vacation and has an English book with me, just for enjoyable reading. I know. It just it just I don't know. It's just the way I'm wired. I have 10 grammar books or more. Do not use commas to set off essential elements of the sentence, just such as clausing beginning with that. Now, this is essential, and you don't need it, but it has an extra word in there. The book that I borrowed from you is excellent. The apples that fell out of the basket. This is more like in a positive, isn't it? Adjective being an adjective phrase, adjectival phrase, probably how you say it, I think, is used as in a positive. You just got to have that in there to determine the meaning of the sentence. You don't need commas. And you're so inclined to put commas a lot of times.
What if you were to take out that?
Oh, okay, go ahead, sister.
How would you write the first sentence if you took the word that out?
The book I borrowed from you is excellent. I don't see anything wrong with that. You would need a comma, but sometimes determining when to use that is, do you include it in your writing or exclude it? I got to research that because I toil over that. Yeah, I love it. I got to research that because I noticed Brother Phillips, I leave him out more so, and I'm wanting to put him in. And sometimes I'll sneak one in and he'll catch it. And then the next edit cut is out. So he's the editor. But yeah, that's something worth looking up and knowing because it's troublesome a little. It's just a little stick in your side like, should I? Is it necessary? A lot of times if you don't stumble when you read or if the meaning is clear, I say you don't need it. But it's probably something more official sounding than just that. Like commas, anytime you want to pause. Well, maybe I pause a lot and sigh. So you would literally litter your sentence with pauses or commas. So that truly dictates the necessity of a comma. Okay. I would say you need it though in the second one. The apples fell out of the basket of bruise. That, yeah, because that'd just be awkward. All right. Here we go.
That's true. I see that.
Use commas to separate through more words, phrases, or clauses written in a sentence. Here we go. The Constitution established the legislative, comma, executive. See, I'd put that comma, but some do not. They would not put in that Oxford comma, and they would just leave it out and say, and judicial branches of government. But I would almost look at that as one unit. Wouldn't you too? Yeah. The candidate promised to lower taxes, protect the environment, reduce crime, and end employment. There you go. Easy. Let's talk a little bit about adjectives. Do adjectives ever give you any trouble? You know what adjective is? It modifies a noun. Yes. And adjectives don't have to be just one word. It can be a phrase. And sometimes you don't need commas when you have just one word, one adjective. Let's talk about it. We awoke to the sound of cheerful songbirds. What a productive day. A mountain cabin was surrounded by a gurgling creek. You see, gurgling is an adjective there. Cheerful songbirds. You don't need any commas. Don't need any commas. That's easy. But let's talk about it. There's a different kind of adjective, coordinate adjectives. We woke to the sound of cheerful. Turkey is a new word. It means cheerful and perky. Songbirds. The old Saturday Night Live, they used to have a guy that would make up words. He was hilarious when it was decent to watch. It's hard to believe in that it was decent to watch one time, knowing what you see now. And what a gratifying and productive day. Our mountain cabin was surrounded by burbling and gurgling creek. I'm on a roll. I promise there's nothing in my coffee except caffeine. Sometimes you want to describe nouns more in detail. You can have 3 or 4 adjectives, but then you start burdening your reader. That's a lot to handle maybe in one sentence or for one word. But you want to describe more in detail, so you use another adjective. And this is right. But what if you were to take out the and? What a gratifying, productive day. Comma yes or comma no. Yeah. So you can give it a test like that. If it makes sense with a conjunction and if you were to move that conjunction, it's got to be replaced with the comma. Let's go to the next one. So those same sentences now necessitate a comma because you've taken out the conjunction. Easy, right? And it makes sense. You just would do it whether you need to do it based on grammar rules or not. You just do it because you hear it. You know, you learn by just rote. You hear things and you hear what people say. So you say it that way, which is not always safe, by the way. Okay, so that's easy. Now, sometimes it's not clear if you need a comma when applying more than one adjective. The order of coordinate adjectives shown in the prior slides can independently modify the noun because they have equal importance. It doesn't matter if I write, he's a happy, lively dog, or he's a lively, happy dog. They carry the same weight, and it just doesn't matter. It's logical, and you get the same meaning. However, look at these sentences. We love to dance to our favorite country ballads. What if I were to write, our country favorite ballads. Doesn't make sense, does it? Both of them are adjectives. It's called cumulative adjectives. Have you seen these 3 stray dogs? Those stray 3 dogs doesn't make sense. You just kind of know, don't do that. Yeah. And you don't need commas when you do write it the correct way. We love to dance our favorite comma country ballads. You don't need a comma when it's this kind of adjective construction. Okay. My purpose in telling you this is not to add stress. It's to alleviate stress. So you just need a little thing so you don't have to stop and research it. But when you are in the work of editing or putting something together, research is so much a part. You just want it, especially what torments you about writing, not the act of writing, but the written. What can torment you about that? Any ideas? It's permanent. And it's in view probably of more people than you realize, especially if you put it on the internet. It's in other people from other countries, for whatever reason, could be reading it. And if you have shown your hand about something, well, that's a good thought, but man, she can't write. You know, you can have good thoughts, and that prevails over maybe some grammatical mistakes. Certain grammatical mistakes are less forgiving than others, though. I will say that. Go ahead, Thea.
On that topic, I can attest to that and conclude that it is absolutely true, because I had a friend who was writing something and we had to like review each other's work. It was an English assignment.
Okay.
And I liked what she was saying or trying to say, but I nearly cried trying to read that paper because there was like run-on sentences or like short, choppy little bits of speech.
Right. You could tell just from that she wasn't a seasoned writer or gave not too much thought in her presentation of her idea.
Exactly.
So, yes, you're being judged when you don't even realize it. Like, I judged Brother Farrell this morning. When he got up to sing, I thought, I've never heard him sing. I didn't know he sang. And then when he sang, I judged that, wow, he can go on the road. He's a good singer. Did y'all know he could sing? I know. It was a blessing. And it was anointed. And yeah, and that's, I heard Brother Phillips tell you that's one of his favorite songs. He wants it sung in his funeral. You may be signed up. I don't know. But I hope that never happens. But it was a blessing. And so, but yes, you can take away from that wonderful idea you have and that valid thought. You just can take away. When I was at Brother Farrell's church, I preached and I used one of my favorite, I need to show y'all that, favorite videos about Tide from 10, 20 years ago. I'm not sure. And the guy goes in and he's probably great at what he does. The Tide commercial doesn't say if he got the job or not. But he's got a white shirt, a tie. He looks the part, doing everything right. And he's saying everything right probably, but you don't hear it. You know why? He's got a big old stain on his shirt. And then that stain starts, hey, and it over speaks what the prospective employee is saying. And then the interviewer is just sitting there going, he can't take his eyes off the stain. So when you have something worthwhile to say or write, your readers may just be overcome by the stains and forget your point. So that's why it's also helpful to you to take a little care into researching, and it pays off. Well, it pays off and make you tired, but it pays off. So you don't want anything detracting from that wonderful message you have. And like I said, more people are forgiving. Like when Abraham Lincoln said, Mr. Chairman, they forgave him, especially after they listened to what he had to say. It was filled with such truth, richness, and hope. All right, I see this all the time, or more so increasingly. Do inside or outside quotation marks? Do you put commas inside or outside of quotation marks? And it's always good to know our other sister language, I guess you can call it that, English from England, I guess the mother language, they have different grammatical rules than we do. They spell words differently than we do. Sometimes I'll have a grammar book and they'll spell, how do we spell realization? They spell it. How do we spell the color gray? We spell it that way, but have you not seen that? When we had Columbia and a mall, Columbia Center, we spell center that way. They spell it this way. And for a long time, we were saying, let's go to the Century. My mom said, let's go to the Central Mall or whatever. And I said, okay. But it's center. So their grammar is different as well. So when they have quotation marks, they'll put them outside. But who is our audience mostly? And we are not from England, or we don't live in England. Use the grammar from your country. That's what you're taught in school. So that answers that, and that may give you a little relief because you can get confused what you see on the internet. Or if you have a grammar book, as I do, that's written from a British author. A comma is the most commonly used punctuation mark to introduce a quotation, and in this case, does not go inside the quotation marks like this. You ever write a sentence like that? That's correct. She said, comma, then you open up the quotation marks. Are y'all looking at the same one? Yep. So, right? You've written it like that. Oh, yeah, go ahead, honey, you drive. Commas as well as periods at the end of the quote do go within the quotation marks, even if they're not part of the original quote, as in this case. Correct? You write it like that? So that's pretty easy. That's not, forget that dot right there. That was, I forget what you call that, but bullet, yes. I love her commitment to correct punctuation, comma, he said to his brother. Or you could write, he said to his brother, then you'd put comma there and do it like that because you're changing the construction of the sentence.
Then you put your period inside
Yes, you would.
What about your scriptural reference?
So when you write a scripture, what you mean, Brother Zach? Like
Right there, I love her commitment. Say that was a quote from
Uh-huh.
Song of Solomon.
Oh.
At the end, I want to notate where it's
If
from.
that's okay, yes.
So wouldn't it be
I love her commitment. And then you'd write Psalms, whatever it is.
right? And wouldn't you put the
Parentheses?
parentheses around Psalms?
Well, if you do it that way, you could do it like that,
Yeah.
and then you would do it like
Period at
that.
the end of that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, correct. Everybody clear on that?
Or you could introduce your book.
I was just going to say, or you could introduce your book, like in the book of Psalms, we read
In the
about
book
her
of Psalms,
commitment.
we'll read comma,
Mhm.
then yes. Okay, what about this next one? Introducing a quotation. A comma is the most commonly used punctuation. She said, I love. Okay, we've already covered that. That's redundant. Okay. Commas, let's see. Which one you on? Commas as well as periods. Okay, no, I got to catch up. That's my problem. Okay, what about this one? Go to this one, honey. You got it. Place a question mark or exclamation point within closing quotation marks if, here's the premise, if the punctuation applies to the quotation itself. Place the punctuation outside the closing quotation marks if the punctuation applies to the whole sentence. Philip asked, well, there's your clue. He asked, so you know what's going to be enclosed in quotations. The question mark should go in there. Otherwise, you would put it outside. That's easy.
So how does that not
How does that not pertain to the whole sentence?
There's other sentences that it wouldn't, and I know, I knew that would be asked, and I need to think of one. Let's see, Philip wrote. Philip,
Could you put, while we were in class today, Philip asked, comma, do we need this book?
no, let's see, while we wrote in class today, comma, Philip asked. You're still saying Philip asked, and he asked that question. I'd put it inside. Yeah, put it inside. Absolutely. I'll give you some examples. I got to look. Let's talk about colons and semicolons right quickly. You ever use those? So let's look at these examples. William described the experiment as a definitive step forward. Now notice it's not in the quotation mark. That's correct. If it were a comma, you'd put it in there. But not for semicolons, you don't, in colons. Mackenzie emphasized 3 elements of what she calls her Olympic journey. You didn't know if Mackenzie here is an Olympian. She agrees. Colon goes outside right there. Something to make your little life, a little easier when you write. And Brother Phillips, I noticed you walked in. We talked about the plea and the need for writers in the church. And hopefully we'll get some articles in the Voice Design. Okay, Brother Phillips? Are you listening?
I'm offended by the whole class.
Y'all ever heard of this phrase, the dreaded comma splice or comma splice? Have you ever seen the face of a baby make when tasting lemon for the first time? Same effect for a comma splice. Well, maybe not, especially if you don't know what it is. If you don't see a coordinating conjunction between 2 independent clauses, you shouldn't see a comma either. Otherwise, that's called a comma splice. So here's 2 incorrect sentences. How would you correct them? I see this a lot.
Take the comma out, add the word and.
Well then, okay. Tell me, class, is this okay, what helps you understand and structure? Structure is important when you build buildings. It's the same thing with sentences. You're building sentences. So in that first example, is that a complex or a compound sentence?
So, my friend loves video games, comma.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. That would correct it. Friend loves video games. Is that a complete thought? That's independent. I gave him Zelda. That's also, you got a subject, verb, and it expresses a complete thought. It's a compound sentence. And the only way to join 2 complete thoughts is by a comma and a conjunction. So you need a conjunction in there, and it would be correct. So is a conjunction. Fanboys. That S on that acronym fanboys, or the word fanboys. That's a lovely shade of green. It's your color. What would be a good conjunction to put in there? Or another whole punctuation itself. What could you use? A semicolon. And you wouldn't capitalize this. If you put a period here, which would be correct too, you'd have to capitalize that, of course, you're starting another sentence. So you've got choices. It facilitates your style. You got choices. Watch what you like. It's always good to vary long sentences with short ones. It adds to the style and the ease of, I don't know, just reading. It's just appreciated by the reader. But I tell you, let me say this. Is the burden to convey the thoughts? No. Is there any burden on the reader? Knowing grammar helps facilitate your comprehension. And so if you want more comprehension, study grammar a little bit more. And I'll give you an example of that tomorrow. But yes, so there's some onus on even the readers. Well, it's not clear to me the way you wrote this, Sister Wanda. Well, if you knew this, maybe this would clarify it, and it may be constructed correctly. So even that. I'm not saying for everybody to become grammar scholars, but just these little tidbits of the most troublesome things, like commas. And like I said earlier, send in an article, we'll help you. Don't be so stressed out about it. Okay. Coming down to the end. Let me see what time it is. Yeah. All right. Is that correct? Well, it's up there incorrect, so what's wrong about that sentence. Oh, next one. It didn't do it, honey. Go in your book, see it. She's going to bring it up. When it sets, it loses that connectivity, doesn't it? Or connection. Deciding between a comma or semicolon. I love your gardens, semicolon, in all their wonder. Why is that incorrect? Go ahead, Thea, quickly. Or somebody who's got a mic.
Because it's an unnecessary stop. You could just remove it and it would make perfect sense.
Yes. What kind of sentence is that? I'm talking about complex, simple, or compound. I know we didn't go over that much, but do both parts of that sentence express a complete thought? So it's not a compound. Is it a simple sentence with just one thought? It's a complex. So you don't have it. The rule about semicolons is you need complete thoughts on either side of the semicolon. So you need nothing there, as Thea said. But if I were to say in all of their wonder and put it before that, would you need a comma? Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Because like I said, when you move it and reconstructing, you may have to consider new grammar rules. All right, the next one. Yeah, here we go. There's different ways to fix it. 3 ways you could write that sentence. And there they are. Okay. Almost. Dates. Does dates ever give you a problem with commas? You ever considered it? I have 3 of them up here, 1 correct and 1 incorrect. Our wedding in April 1993 was beautiful. That's correct. Sometimes you'll see it after the year, like you see it correct after the year here, but the date is modified. So when you don't have the month, day, and year, you don't need the comma between the month and the year, but you do here. And look at that one. So maybe that'll help you a little bit. You ever even thought about when you write dates? If you need the comma after the year, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Always a lot to consider. Isn't this fun? We'll have fun tomorrow with dangling modifiers. Oh, it's hilarious. So, your question, do I dangle? Am I misplaced? Am I a misplaced modifier? So, all right, class is over. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.